I made £125,000 in 3 weeks in my business, and I learned five important lessons that I'm going to share with you today. And I really believe that every business owner and entrepreneur needs to hear this. My name's Jeremy Jacobs. I've been an entrepreneur for 18 years. I built a seven-figure food business from no money, and I now work as a business coach and mentor, and I also have a marketing agency. And the reason for me doing this video is that when I first started my business in the early days, I was in my late 20s, and I have to admit, I was a bit of an arrogant, whatever you want to call me. And that might be a bit to do with my personality. It might have been to do with my age. But one of the things that I never did in my early stages is ask for help and seek the knowledge and experience of people who've been there before. You might not be the same, but as I've got older, I've really noticed the importance of asking for help and learning from the people that have been there and done it. So if you're one of those people who is open to learning from other people's mistakes and also learning from what they've learned and taking that and applying that to your own business, then stick around for this episode, because this really is 18 years worth of experience all packaged up in this one episode for you to learn from. So I just want to start off by providing some context around all of this, because of course, when someone says I made 125K in 3 weeks, that sounds amazing. 100% true. I made 125K in 3 weeks. But there's a couple of things that you need to know about my business at the time and where we were at, which will provide some context around it, which is going to be really important. The first thing to say is I had an established business. My business had been running for about 10 years by this point. And it was around the time of COVID. So I had a business that was doing very well. And a lot of my clients were airlines, airport lounges, and retail outlets. And you don't have to be a genius to figure out what actually happened. Majority of those businesses, if not all, closed. And we lost 100% of our turnover overnight. Now, this was around the time when a lot of people were naturally at home. And if you are someone who likes food, you might have got into baking, or you might already been in baking. And if you were, you would have realized that all of the flour had disappeared off the supermarket shelves very, very quickly. Everyone was going to the supermarkets and the stores, buying up all the flour, and they ran out of stock. You couldn't get flour anywhere for love nor money. The reason behind that was because the companies that put the flour into retail packaging were overwhelmed with demand naturally, and they couldn't keep up. So it meant that the stock just disappeared from the shelves. But what I'd realized is that we had loads of flour in our bakery, and I'd even called our suppliers and said, have you got a shortage of flour? And they said, no, absolutely not. We've got loads of it. So there was my entrepreneurial idea. Why don't I sell flour online? I'd had a couple of people on a local Facebook group who'd been asking about where to buy flour. And so I bought it home from the bakery, because we were still working at that time. We were considered an essential service, so our business continued to operate. And I was bringing big bags of flour at home, bagging them up, and then selling them to my neighbors for quite a nice margin. And I had a realization, well, if my people in my local area are looking for this product, then surely there's going to be people out there who need it. So overnight, I set up a Shopify website. I used my skills as a marketer to start advertising online, and the floodgates truly opened. We were getting hundreds and hundreds of orders in a very short space of time, completely overwhelmed us. So what are those lessons that I learned? Now, these are some lessons that any experienced business owner will teach you or could tell you about. But for me, these are the five things that I learned that really, really, really important for entrepreneurs and business owners to think about. Because if you're ever in a situation where you suddenly got this surge in demand, or you wanted to try and recreate that, then these are the things that you need to think about to make that happen, but also make sure that it is successful. Before I say any more, about 6 weeks to maybe 2 months after that initial huge influx of demand happened, the demand dropped off. And we had to go back to working in our business in the normal way. Of course, COVID was still a problem and we still had challenges, but this huge influx of money and income and revenue and profit made a huge difference to our business continuing. So the first lesson in what I learned making 125K in 3 weeks is making sure that you find the demand. Now, this is aimed at people who don't have this luxury of this worldwide pandemic creating this huge amount of demand. But I talk about this first lesson because it's something that people do not pay enough attention to. You have an idea, or you have a skill or something you think that you could sell, and then you go and you set up a business around it. I see this happen all the time. We as entrepreneurs are people who like to move quickly, and all of the top entrepreneur content creators and books and anything out there talking about entrepreneurship is all about making sure that you find a product that sells or you solve a problem. But the step that people seem to miss is actually going to make sure that you have a demand for it and that you don't have a ton of competitors in that space. Because that was the two key things that came out of this situation was, one, there were no or hardly competitors and there was a huge demand. So no supply, lots of demand. And it's a step that people seem to skip over because they are in the situation themselves. They see a problem and they think, well, if I've got this problem, then clearly other people have. And that is 100% true. But are there enough people who have that problem? So is there enough demand? But then you also need to think about, is there a problem with supply? Because if there's a lot of competitors in your market that are selling the same product or service, then you're going to have a problem. So in this situation, we had a huge amount of demand. We had hardly any competitors. And so we were able to make 125K in 3 weeks. We ended up selling 25 tons of flour in that time. And yeah, it was a rare event, but it highlights this issue around going and doing your research and making sure that there is enough demand and that there's not too many competitors. There's plenty of tools out there that can help you to actually look at those numbers and actually figure out how many, for example, you are targeting a small business, how many small businesses are there that fit that criteria, and actually go and speak to them, actually go and do your research and find out whether or not this is a problem that needs solving and there's a demand for it. Doing that research at the beginning, understanding your ideal customer profile, the problems that they have, and whether or not there is a demand, and then going and looking at how many competitors are actually out there doing the same thing that you're doing, even just a simple Google search, and actually look at what is out there is so important. And it's something that people miss all the time. Lesson number 2 is be prepared. If you are fortunate enough to be able to find a service or a product that is in demand and doesn't have a lot of competitors, then you need to make sure that you're prepared to deal with that demand. And that was a big lesson for us. We were fortunate enough we had an established business, but we didn't have all the systems in place to meet that demand. And we had to work incredibly hard to build those systems whilst we were actually trying to deliver on the product, get that product out to the people. And again, it's another step that people don't think about. How am I going to make sure that I can deliver on what I promised to my clients in a way that doesn't leave them pissed off, annoyed, and giving you bad reviews and bad press, because that is going to kill your business off faster than anything else. So make sure that you actually spend the time thinking about, how am I going to deliver to the customer? What are the potential issues that might come up? Do I have the support in place to be able to deliver on what we say we're going to deliver on? We had to go and hire 15 people in the space of about 48 hours. We had no system for getting the product out to the customers, so we had to find a courier. We had to make sure that they could handle the demand. We had to think about returns. We had to think about getting the payments in, paying our staff. There were so many things to think about. We didn't have the luxury of time. But if you are going to go out there and try and sell a product that has a lot of demand, make sure you spend the time investing in your systems, automating as much as possible so that when that demand does come in, you don't crumble under the pressure and fail and kill off your business before it's even had a chance to get started. Lesson number 3 I learned in making 125K in 3 weeks was around commitment to quality. Again, this is something that I think people don't spend enough attention and time on. Coming off the back of lesson 2 about making sure you're prepared, making sure that you can maintain high standards, especially when things are moving very quickly. It is a challenge because you're under a lot of pressure, but it's so easy when you're under that pressure to take your eye off the ball and actually making sure you're delivering quality service or a quality product to your customer. And the main reason for this is if you're not focusing on quality, you're going to piss your customers off. You're going to get bad reviews. You're not going to get people talking about you. And this is really, really important when you're building a business to make sure that you deliver on that quality. You keep your customers happy because they will talk about you positively, whether that's in reviews or whether that's actually speaking and sharing your business to their fellow friends, co-workers, colleagues, whoever. But it's all about helping them to do the marketing for you. Lesson number 4 is about thinking about retention. Again, this naturally flows on from lesson number 3, which is about commitment to quality, but it's about thinking about how you can keep your customers connected to your brand, how you can keep them coming back. And that's something that we try to do, and I don't think we did it very well. So learn from me if you can. And that is thinking about how you can keep your customers engaged, because as I said earlier, the demand dropped off very quickly, and we did think about this, but we could have done a better job. And that is about things like getting people signed up to a newsletter so you can keep in touch, you can keep updating with them. We did create a loyalty program, which was built into our system, which meant that people earn a percentage of what they spent to spend in the future. And that definitely did work. And also it meant that people spoke about us positively. They liked us, they gave us great reviews. So naturally they did come back. But again, it's something that we probably could have thought about in the earlier stages when we first started getting this demand and thinking about, well, how are we going to keep this customer and keep them coming back? Because that is the lifeblood of your business. It's much, much easier and less expensive to keep a customer than it is to go and find a new one. That is marketing and business strategy 101. So when you're thinking about the demand, the product, how are you going to keep your customers happy? Also think about that mechanism from the first interaction with your business, getting them to sign up to a newsletter, getting them to share on social media, engaging with them and keeping them, loyal to your brand is so, so important. Lesson number 5 from making 125K in 3 weeks is all about investing in advertising. It's a sad fact of life that you do need to invest in advertising if you want to grow your business quickly. Organic things like social media or natural SEO do take time. It takes time to build an audience. It takes time for people to get to know about your brand. The quickest and fastest way is through advertising, whether that's through Meta, so Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, Snapchat, or Google advertising on Google search. The fact of the matter is that if you want growth, you are going to have to invest in ads. If you don't have the budget to invest in ads, it's going to be much harder for you to create that demand quickly. And so again, if you are going to think about this seriously and you do want serious growth, you are going to have to invest in advertising. Our business and that growth would not have happened had we have not advertised on Google and put our business in front of people who are searching for flour online. Absolutely not. We wouldn't have been able to achieve that through social media as quickly. Yes, it might have helped, but ads and investment in spending on ads is the way to go. So those are the 5 lessons that I learned in making 125K in 3 weeks. I hope they've been useful. I learned these lessons the hard way. You don't have to. Whether you've got a business or whether you are thinking about starting a business, please pay attention and listen to these pieces of advice that I've learned the hard way, and invest your time, money, and energy into making sure you've got those 5 things in place before you get started to give you the very best chance of success.